Do you know what this is?
Some kind of mutant weed? My God, it's not one of ours, is it? If this gets out...
It is a flower.
Gustave Flowerbear? We settled out of court with him.
No. A flower.
What am this flower? What am flower?
What am flower?
What am it? What am flower? What am flower?
Sons of Comtec am the title of a comic I've been working on with my friend, the incredible Ben Hutchings, for more than 10 years now. It nears completion. I am in the midst of designing the book for print. You are imagining, perhaps, a massive tome, something about this size? The output of 2 cartooning geniuses over the course of a decade. But no, it's only about 65 pages of actual solid comic. It was a very close collaboration without a simple division of labour like writer-illustrator or penciler-inker or anything like that. But at the same time, we were physically on opposite ends of the Pacific Ocean. How did that work? With difficulty is the answer. With some pages lost in the mail early on, as a matter of fact. With difficulty.
But also with love and understanding, which can bring us through even the darkest of times. If we just remember the simple and very real power of kindness.
It has also been a side project for the both of us, sometimes a side project, sent dejectedly to the back of the queue again and again to make room for the drama of life and, of course, for paid work, which making Sons of Comtec was absolutely not. So a side project. Like if Sons of Comtec were on our family tree, it would be so horizontally distant from us that we could probably marry it and have only moderately deformed offspring. And let's not forget that comics as a medium is, on the whole, just very time-consuming and labor-intensive. Many art forms are, but comics really is uniquely torturous. It's like a particularly vicious kind of penance where you end up in hell anyway. And exacerbating that problem, in this particular case, is the fact that one of the collaborators is much slower and much fussier than the other. Yes, sorry, Ben. But that last point is good news for you, the consumer of content, because let me tell you, this book, it's gonna be slim, but it's gonna be beautiful. I already put a lot of work into editing and cleaning up the artwork and preparing the pages for print, and more recently I've been laying them out in Affinity Publisher and thinking through the front matter and the back matter and so on. But another big task I'm very happy to have crossed off the list recently is finishing the front cover illustration. It was penciled by Ben very efficiently following a video call we had in March of 2024, so like a year ago, but we made a few changes and I got a scan of the pencils in May, and it has been colored by me intermittently over the many months since then. Like I said, slow and fussy and sorry, but would you like to see it? Here it is! Now I want want to show you and talk you through the steps I took from the pencils to the final painting. But first, surely you're gagging to know who the Jesusing shit are these intriguing characters.
Reynaldo, do you trust me? For if you ever trusted me, you must trust me now more than ever before.
I do trust you, boss.
Shh. Do you trust me, Reynaldo?
Yes,
Shh. Reynaldo, there are going to be some big changes at Comtec, changes that will take this company into the future.
You're gonna build a time machine?
Reynaldo, how much do you know about anime?
Well, Comtec is a corporation in a building. And there's people who work for it. Wesley Forlock from Acquisitions.
Wesley.
Wesley Forlock Acquisitions, like stocks, real estate, achievement. He likes achievement.
He loves achievement. That's
Srum
his hobby.
Babbitt.
Srum Babbitt.
Crimpets and Lugrudigal Snurp.
That's her department.
She likes AFL.
What's the story, would you say, Ben, of Comtec?
I would say everyone in Comtec really has a different story. That's a good answer, isn't it?
Everyone at Comtec does have a little story of their own.
Would I say it was a series of amusing vignettes in comic book form about Comtec, which is a company in a building full of people who work there, each with their own story, intermingling and navigating the complex business world. Don't wipe your snot on me.
Mlervin, this
Yeah.
character here.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the model for this fella?
So from I was remembering a character from Smallville, the TV show about Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Smallville, and there was a character who I think was Lex Luthor's dad.
Yeah, it's
maybe?
Lex Luthor Sr.
Yeah, and he was a ruthless businessman who had a beard and long hair. So he was that Richard Branson style of businessman. The look was a Richard Branson style. And I remember him, and he's based on him, but only from memory. And so when I was drawing him, I was remembering someone else, so I can't really say a friend. Remembering his face a little bit, so I sort of drew on that and made him look like that, he's a cool businessman because he's got long hair and probably listens to Pink Floyd. That's where his coolness ends. Yeah.
Sometimes he might even walk around his carpeted office barefoot.
Yeah.
He might take his shoes off.
Yeah, he might undo the top button even.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of guy. Just so cool.
This smooth operator is Mlervin von Camelanch, a C-suite executive at Comtec, where the C stands for cool guy, and sweet means sweet, but like sweet. Mlervin is powerful and respected, but has some unconventional ideas about business. He has a small Japanese water garden in his office and is pen pals with a dolphin. Mlervin's protégé is Reynaldo, a tidy-haired rectangular prism of solid business know-how. Not yet in full flower, perhaps Reynaldo is pinching his own blossom with his adherence to convention. Business charts? Profit and lossery? Hey, Reynaldo, take a leap of faith once in a while into the ocean of your own potential. You might just make a splash! And this be-shouldered beauty is Winter Styles. She might be a woman, but she's got 2 shins and 4 arms like anyone else, and she's using them, and many more body parts, to climb the corporate stairwell like a rocket on roller skates. Her name might be Winter, but she's gonna melt obstacles like popsicles. Would melt in summer, which is not winter. It's the opposite. Anyway. At long last, here's a cowboy. He ain't got much o' your fancy book learning. So as I mentioned, Ben and I had a video call to talk about what we wanted to do for the cover, and we shot ideas back and forth while Ben made sketches. I think we were both keen to have that chromy robocopy look to the title lettering, like how the future looked in the 80s, and Ben really wanted to have the title be absolutely massive and have that Superman-style 3D-ness extending all the way back. Now, having a huge diagonally oriented object in that position on the canvas is quite challenging to illustrate and design around, and it does create what could turn into a dead space in the whole top left corner, but that's the trade-off for it looking really bold and unusual. And bold and unusual is what we wanted for the whole cover. We want to both grab people's attention and make them feel confused as to what kind of book this might be. An unconventional marketing strategy, you might think, but, well, why don't you mind your own fucking business? We wanted this illustration to clearly be funny, but not look like a parody or satire of anything in particular, because, yes, Sons of Comtec isn't that. But we did allow ourselves to borrow images that we felt like resonated somehow with the comic, and this odd couple in business suits, casually leaning back to back. You could imagine this on the cover of an old VHS buddy comedy about a smart guy and a wisecracking guy taking on the world of finance or whatever. I did ask Ben to position the second guy lower and lower and lower down the first guy's back, because I think someone trying to look casual while holding an obviously difficult and uncomfortable pose is very, very funny. Once we started thinking about 80s comedies and VHS covers, it became clear that we needed to have a sexy woman's leg coming in from the side. Somewhere. Anywhere. So, there it is. So Ben did these beautiful pencils, and my self-assigned job was then to paint them. And I say paint rather than merely colour because I really wanted the cover illustration to look rich and deep and textured, basically to indicate the quality of the comic within. We both spent a long time on Sons of Comtec, and although it's very silly, it also might be a masterpiece. So I want the cover to say, this is a comedy, but it's not a trifling work. Anyway, before painting, though, my first job was to take this into my ancient copy of Photoshop and adjust it to match the actual proportions of the book, give it a bleed region, and so on. So that's what I've done here. You can see I've also straightened the title text and ruled in some guides for when I ink it later. And you can't see this, but I also separated the pencils into layers because I'll be colouring the illustration in layers just for ease and flexibility, put simply. So at this point, I imported the Photoshop file into Procreate on my aging but fairly dependable first generation iPad Pro. And if you're curious, I was working at 400 dpi and the book will be Japanese or JIS B5 size. That's 182 by 257 millimeters, not the same as ISO B5. But the same proportions. And of course, this image has a considerable bleed region beyond that. And as you can see, I've expanded the edges of the illustration to fill that bleed region. I've moved the sexy leg out of the way for the time being so that I can do the title properly, and I've drawn Reynaldo's face in place of the generic man
that Ben had there originally for some reason. I think maybe Ben was considerately giving me the opportunity to draw a different character from the book there, one who originated with me, because now that I think about it, all three of these characters, Winterstyles, Mlerven and Reynaldo, all three of them are characters that Ben came up with first. But of course, we both used these characters, and in any case, these are the three characters that readers will spend the most time with in the book. And in particular, Mlerven and Reynaldo really do have the exact sort of boss-sidekick relationship that we see depicted here. So it has to be them. Okay, so I've put the title to one side and we're going to work on the foreground characters here. The first thing I did was create a palette, as you can see, which we will be sticking to throughout. I picked the colours from a kind of vaporwave illustration that I found somewhere, but one that had a more interesting and usefully varied palette than the typical cyan and magenta stuff. Sons of Comtec absolutely is not vaporwave, the graphic novel, whatever that would be, but in some ways it is a kind of pastiche of non-specific, timeless corporate tropes, drawing from some of the same wells, so a little overlapping of imagery was inevitable, and I couldn't think of a reason to deliberately avoid that. In the end, nice colours are nice colours, and corporate clichés are what they are. Anyway, I've slapped some colours onto Reynaldo and Mlerven here, and now I've gone in and rendered them much more satisfyingly, and I also broadened the winning grin on Reynaldo's face because his expression just didn't feel quite exhausting enough. Look at him smile now. That's a man you just want to give money to. On to Winter now. So that I can paint her on her own layer, I've filled in the gaps after cutting away the boys in front, and laid down the basic colours and darkened and clarified the line work where I felt it was necessary. Winter's kind of a backdrop in this illustration, so she's going to be kind of a solid wall of blue-green pastels and soft painterly textures. So here I've rendered her according to that idea, and at this point I thought, wow, this looks great. This is exactly what I was going for. Look at how much that painting looks like painting. This is so nice. Well done me. And it is nice, I still think, but I realised it's too nice. I've smoothed her out too much with all my blendy painty stuff, and I've unconsciously sort of corrected her face in the process, like given her cosmetic surgery. If we flip back and forth between the stages, you can see that we've lost so much of the characterful Alfred E. Newman-esque wonkiness of Ben's original pencils. Put simply, Winter doesn't look as funny as she did before. So in the next stage, as you can see, I've basically traced and replicated a lot of Ben's pencil layer and done a bit of repainting as well to restore that subtly off-putting character to Winter's self-assured smile. The small changes, particularly around her eyes and lower lip, I think make a remarkable difference. I was also happy to reintroduce a bit of pencil texture anyway. I quite like the fact that the final illustration looks a bit like a drawing and a bit like a painting at the same time, which is tricky to pull off, but it's nice to have the advantages of both. Backdrop done, Now I can render the boys even more fully with something to contrast them against. They've got more warmth, and the light and shadow are really bringing them to life now. Speaking of lighting, at this point I have a pretty definite idea in my head of what the fully coloured illustration, including the title, will look like, and thus what the final lighting stages of the drawing are going to be. And so I'll be colouring and rendering with those final stages in mind. So from here, there's kind of an imaginary lighting layer on this drawing that you can't see, but I can, sort of. I can't see it vividly because I don't have such a powerful mind's eye as that. I think some people do, but for me, I'm kind of feeling my way through this process based partly on the end result that I want, as much as I can imagine it, and partly on what I know needs to happen based on previous drawing experience. Does that make sense? Sometimes when we create, we're just having fun and learning in the process, but when we have a particular goal or when we want to try something ambitious, we're kind of sewing these delicate threads between what we want to achieve and what we know we're capable of, and trying to sew those two together, sort of drawing them together without the threads breaking. Anyway, there's the floor. It doesn't look like much, but it took bloody forever for a number of reasons, but particularly getting the colours just so. Isn't the illustration starting to look complete now, though? See? It really ties the room together. We're getting a sense of winter kind of glowing now, too, as if the very moon, which also really ties the room together, and related to that are these subtle areas of green here and there. If winter's eyes are the only actually green objects in the drawing, but there are less obvious spots of green all around, really tying the room together, that will draw attention to them and make them seem important, which is a nice way of giving winter some prominence despite not being in the foreground and despite having less rich and vivid colouring. The other thing giving her prominence is, of course, that she is apparently about the size of Godzilla. I do like the idea of winter being a sort of looming menace in the background. That's not exactly her role in the comic, but it seems to fit. It kind of feels about right. So with the drawing feeling finished enough, I moved on to the title, painstakingly inking it by hand, getting all the curves right, making little adjustments, etc., and laying down the flat colours. Oh, but then there's the upper tier of text to do too. And I'm wondering about that leg. A lot of fussy ruling and drawing and inking and colouring. And I did make a start on the lighting and rendering of the title text at this point. You'll see more of that in a moment. But I didn't get far into it before putting it aside and taking a break from the work because I was getting a bit burnt out and I just didn't feel ready to tackle the text. I wanted it to look really, really, really cool in a specific way. But at that moment, I just felt like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I can't do this. So I took a break and then life got in the way and I didn't get back to it for, I think, about a month and a half. I think I was busy selling shit online to pay my rent and bills. Also at this stage, I was wrestling with the sexy leg. Less fun than it sounds. Initially, I'd intended to colour it, like the rest of the drawing, after taking care of the title text, so on the layer above, but now that the title text was in place and looking good, I decided I didn't want anything interfering with it. It's the fucking title, after all. But I couldn't find anywhere else to put the leg without throwing off the balance of the whole composition, so after a lot of mucking about, I decided, reluctantly but with some relief, to amputate. I think I might still put it on the back cover though. I really do like the idea of a poorly drawn sexy leg coming in from out of frame without any context. It's funny, and also I really do believe that even sex appeal done as a joke, as a total piss take, might still help to sell a few books. But as for the front cover, I think Winter Styles' puffy, gargantuan, asymmetrical mug is alluring enough on its own. We don't want to overpower people. We don't want men passing by and collapsing in front of our table at the indie book fair, their legs spaghettified by desire. We don't want your trouble, men. We just want your fucking money. Okay, so then I finally finished these shadows, and then I did the shiny reflective stuff. And it wasn't so horribly difficult after all. I did think that this penciled look might help the title text kind of harmonize with the illustration, but nah, it's obviously wrong, certainly on the shiny front, so on to the next stage. I've polished the lettering, as you can see. Procreate doesn't have a gradient tool, but I would have done this by hand anyway, I think. It's stupidly time-consuming, but I really wanted the whole illustration to look hand-painted as much as possible, like a huge mural advertisement on the side of a multi-story building. I've also added a blue glow around Melbourne and Reynaldo, and corresponding shadows all over, both cast by the celestial light of winter. By the way, did you know that the character design of Winter Styles is modelled on the irredeemably awful tabloid current affairs TV presenter Tracy Grimshaw? Now here comes some really nice lighting. Are you ready? Oh, now that really ties the room together. It's a sort of orange-pink, I guess peach-coloured light coming from somewhere out of frame, but in such a way that you can imagine it maybe reflecting off the title text as well. Don't think about it too much. It works. All that remains is to dot the I's and cross the T's, but in drawing form, which takes longer. Ta-da! Or as the French would say, ooh la la, that's one spicy meatball. I dialed the new lighting back a tiny bit and added a shadow for it. Winter got some little eye shines. I put some outer space in the outer space place, and at Ben's suggestion, I smoothed out the shading on the sides of the title text as well. And actually, the title text colours were starting to look a little dull next to the fully rendered tableau beneath, so I tweaked them as well. They're a bit more vivid now. Mind you, how well I can get those beautiful eye-catching pinks to translate to CMYK for print remains to be seen. But if a lot of people pre-order the book, maybe we can afford 6-color printing. That would be sexually gratifying. And actually, there's one more tiny little change I made. The peach-coloured lighting across Melbourne's top right edge is now a cyan green colour, as if lit by the glow of that far-off gas giant. Look closely. Pretty nice, yeah? Anyway, there it is. Our author names will go across the top. There'll be a starburst with some corporate gobbledygook in the bottom left, maybe the publisher name across the bottom right, something like that. And that's what I wanted to show you. I hope it was interesting. Maybe you learned something about colouring, or collaboration, or the power of love. I'll tell you what I didn't learn, Patrick. You are yelling at me. Stop it, by the way. I said stop it. I didn't learn how to get a hold of this Sons of Comtec book. I want to buy it now. It looks really funny and interesting. Well, thank you. And also, calm the fuck down. Jesus Christ. When the book's ready to go, soon, we will be running a crowdfund for it as a way of both promoting it a little and taking pre-orders. When that happens, I will definitely talk about it on this channel, so stay subscribed, because of course you already are. Or alternatively, or in addition, you can subscribe to my email newsletter, which I very rarely use, but I will for this. Of course, both Ben and I can be found elsewhere on this very internet. I will put links in the description. Pay particular attention, why don't you, to Ben's Patreon and my Ko-fi. They are really good ways of helping people like us make the sort of stuff that you want to enjoy. Questions? Comments? But that's all for now. This has been Patrick Alexander's World of Content. I'm an adorable alpaca wearing a waistcoat, Patrick Alexander. And as always, I've enjoyed making this video, you've enjoyed watching it, but that doesn't make us friends. Goodbye!